This is the CBS Evening News with Harry Reisner substituting for Walter Cronkite. And Eric Severide in Washington, Roger Mudd in Washington, John Hart in San Francisco, Bruce Morton in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and David Shoemaker in Washington.
Good evening. The nomination of Abe Fortas to be Chief Justice of the United States ran into trouble as soon as President Johnson submitted it. Today, that nomination is in deep trouble. CBS News correspondent Roger Mudd reports from Washington.
President Johnson got the bad news at the White House today. The Senate leadership told him it has just about thrown in the sponge in the battle to confirm Abe Fortas as Chief Justice. Mike Mansfield said the opposition has not only increased, it has also hardened. Mansfield said he is not now at all sure when the Judiciary Committee, which still holds the nomination, will act. But if it does, he said, there are not enough votes in the Senate to break the certain filibuster against Fortas. Republican leader Everett Dirksen, who is up for re-election and whose enthusiasm for Fortas has cooled recently, pointed out it is customary to withdraw a nomination after 2 attempts are made to close debate. But there is no indication yet the president will. The opposition to Fortas, led by Republican Griffin of Michigan, was not against the justice's qualifications, which are said to be superior, but was based on the cronyism charge and on a widespread public conviction that the choice of a new Chief Justice should await a new president. If Richard Nixon is elected, it will be a bitter pill not only for Lyndon Johnson, but also Earl Warren. Roger Mudd, CBS News, Washington.
Senator Dirksen said today there have been at least 3 threats against his life during the past 6 months. As a result, he said, he's been under guard off and on by police and federal agents. Senate Majority Leader Mansfield said today it's questionable whether the Senate will approve this year the treaty to stop the spread of nuclear arms. There's increasing opposition, he added, because of the invasion of Czechoslovakia. Defense Secretary Clark Clifford today announced the United States will start work on the Sentinel anti-missile system, which will eventually cost at least $5 billion. The Pentagon had hoped to pass over the Sentinel this year as part of the spending cuts ordered by Congress. But Clifford told the National Press Club in Washington that these cuts will not be possible because of new developments.
Some had thought, and there had been some signs that justified such thinking, that today's Soviet Union was a far better neighbor than the Soviet Union of the late 1940s. The events of the past couple of weeks, I submit, have clearly demonstrated that a significant American military presence in Western Europe is still needed. At the same time, our NATO allies surely must review these events from the standpoint of the effect upon our and their common security. The developments of these last few days confirm the fact that when and if we negotiate, safety and success demand that we negotiate from strength.
At the end of a long day, nothing's better than a Miller High Life. Why? Simply because Miller makes it right. Miller, the champagne of bottled beer.
Richard Nixon returned to his native state of California today, the second stop on his formal campaign to win the presidency. The city was San Francisco. The theme was unity. CBS News correspondent John Hart reports.
Coming to California, Richard Nixon entered what he calls a battleground. Threatened on the right by George Wallace and from the left by long and bitter California memories, Nixon's hope is party unity. At San Francisco's airport, he was flanked by a black northerner, a white southerner, and a conservative westerner.
You see here the Republican Party at its best. all segments of the party represented strongly, vigorously. And I say to you that as we see Governor Reagan, as we see Ed Brooke from the state of Massachusetts and Druston Morton from the state of Kentucky, that I'm very proud to say that as we fly in today, that while I like American Airlines and while I like TWA and while I like Western Airlines, that this year we're flying United all the way.
In Chinatown, the Nixon motorcade got a less scrutable welcome than in Chicago yesterday. But he remembered publicly that in 1960, he won California. Now his strategy is to win again all of his 26 states of 8 years ago and add one big one. His deliberate impression of a California bandwagon is amplified by the Democratic despondency brought back here from last week's Chicago, and by his firm lead over Humphrey in the California opinion polls. Today he counted noses and offered a Chinese proverb. Failure is an orphan, he quoted, but victory has many children. It may be worth noting that on Montgomery Street in Chinatown, his crowds were smaller today than when he ran for governor 6 years ago and lost. John Hart, CBS News, San Francisco.
Nixon's running mate, Spiro Agnew, spent part of his day in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, charging that 8 years of Democratic administration have created a financial crisis on the farm. Agnew also found out firsthand what kind of corn they grow in Iowa. Bruce Morton reports.
Vice presidential candidates get stuck a lot. Today, Spiro Agnew got stuck with visiting an Iowa farm, 360 acres worth, owned by a man named Vernon Dice. A local congressional candidate went along as interpreter between governor and farmer.
If we went to this tillable acres, which I've been proposing, it would increase the number of farmers participating, and then supply and demand would be more nearly in balance.
Agnew stood awkwardly holding a piece of corn while the local candidate told him that farmers like Vern were concerned with more than the farm problem, with Vietnam, race, the cities. Vern, said the local man, could you convey this feeling to the governor? Vern paused and said, that's right. Agnew fiddled with his ear of corn and said he'd take it back to Maryland and transplant it. A Farm Belt reporter snorted and said, that's hybrid corn, you can't transplant it. They looked at hogs, too. The farmer explained that these had farrowed in April. That's so, said Agnew. I thought some of them came from Chicago. He never did say whether he meant they looked like policemen or Democrats or what. Bruce Morton, CBS News, Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Robert Nathan, who is Hubert Humphrey's main economic advisor, said today that Humphrey will not seek the presidency by promising to cut taxes. This would only be irresponsible, Nathan said. He added that if Humphrey is elected, he might ask Congress to extend the 10% tax surcharge another year. It's due to expire next June 30th.
Introducing... Hi, I'm Poppin' Fresh, the Pillsbury Doughboy, with a Poppin' Fresh idea. Pillsbury Butterflake dinner rolls, layered with butter. Nothing smells so good or tastes so good. Pillsbury Butterflake rolls in the dairy case. Poppin' Fresh dough says fresh home baking. And Pillsbury says it's best. And that's not all, folks. Danish sweet rolls. Choose from 3 Danish favorites: cinnamon, caramel, orange. In the dairy case. Pillsbury Poppin' Fresh dough makes the flakiest sweet rolls. These are orange Danish with creamy icing. Tender, flaky. Poppin' Fresh dough says fresh, home-baked Danish rolls. And Pillsbury says it best.
In Oakland, California, the 8-week trial of Black Panther leader Huey Newton went to a jury today. Newton, 26, is charged with killing one policeman and wounding another during a shooting in a Negro neighborhood last fall. A group of Black Panthers was turned back, and some of them roughed up yesterday when they tried to enter a Brooklyn criminal court where 3 Black Panthers were getting a hearing. Among the whites who turned back the Panthers reportedly were some off-duty New York policemen. Mayor Lindsay ordered an immediate report, and after he got it, held a news conference.
Commissioner Leary has informed me that off-duty policemen, as well as civilians, were involved. Commissioner Leary has assured me that he will take immediate and vigorous action against any individual member of the force who has violated either the law or departmental regulations, including criminal prosecution, if that is warranted by the facts. There can be absolutely no excuse whatever for a handful of police officers breaking the law. This kind of lawlessness undermines public confidence in our police, and it may encourage others to take the law into their own hands. There can be no safety, no law, no order, and no justice unless we are absolutely sure that this kind of ugly incident does not happen again in this city.
Many American cities have had less racial trouble this year than had been expected. A case in point is Atlanta, where city officials have been making an extra effort to keep things cool.
Tell me the things the city needs to be doing we're not doing.
We need better housing.
Better housing. I'm with you on that.
More employment.
We need more employment. Okay.
Atlanta's Mayor Ivan Allen communicating with his constituency. A constituency that is almost 50% black.
Well, I still believe we need to do some more houses to be done.
Yeah.
Because I haven't got no place.
You have trouble finding a good place to live at a reasonable price.
For real.
Yeah.
For real.
Right. All right.
This communication is part of a program to keep Atlanta cool by showing the ghetto neighborhoods that the white power structure cares.
It's an intangible thing that you have to get through by actual action, and that's what we're trying to do following the Crime Commission report, is to take that action which the Crime Commission report, which said do something so that people will know you have an interest in it.
That something includes a jobmobile sponsored by anti-poverty agencies with the help of the Georgia Department of Labor. It moves into neighborhoods with high unemployment rates and helps to find jobs for the jobless. And others are helping too.
This is Frank Ridley calling about the summertime employment program being conducted under the auspices of the National Alliance of Businessmen in Atlanta.
White business executives are phoning their counterparts in the business community to find summer jobs for Negro teenagers. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, we consider that if you can find gainful employment, it would not be throwing money away. However, you know your own situation best, sir.
In spite of some discouragements, the program has led to employment of 1,400 teenagers. Other programs, street cleaning, dependable garbage collection, these are things prosperous communities take for granted. But they are very big things to a ghetto dweller. Slowly but surely, Atlanta's slums are disappearing. In their place rise low-cost housing complexes. By the end of next year, nearly 1,500 family units will have been completed. A trailer which converts into a stage with its own power supply and portable lighting is moved into the neighborhood. This was donated by a group of Atlanta businessmen. It is ideal to do the boogaloo on. When temperatures rise in the low-income neighborhoods, portable pools are there to cool things off. And if no swimming pool is handy, police turn fire hydrants into street showers. Supervision is handled by community service officers, teenage males hired from the ghettos they work in. They wear the uniforms of policemen, but they do not wear guns. Despite all this, despite the recreation, the new jobs, the new attention, there are those who think it is not enough. Among them are some Negro policemen who complain that even in progressive Atlanta, police patrols remain segregated.
Are Negro officers allowed to work in white communities of Atlanta?
No.
Are white officers allowed to work in Negro communities?
Yes.
And here's the rub.
The rub is that we're not allowed to work together.
The Negro policeman has authority to arrest anywhere in Atlanta, but basically you use Negro policemen in Negro areas because Negro areas are more receptive to the Negro policeman than they are the white policemen. And basically you use, although there are overlapping instances and not segregated instances, basically you use white policemen in white areas. This is merely for the best police protection and has nothing to do with segregation or integration.
The white policeman in the community, in the black community, will never be accepted and known and identified with this community unless he is allowed to work with a black policeman so that we can indoctrinate him as to how black people live.
City Hall. Nobody bothers me. On the left.
No one pretends that Atlanta has reached the millennium in race relations, but no one can doubt that Atlanta is trying. This march, to demonstrate concern for the problems of the poor, included leading members of Atlanta's professional, business, intellectual, and student communities. The marchers were predominantly white. There are some signs the program is paying off. There was no rioting in Atlanta after the murder of Martin Luther King. And John Maltlicker Patrick, a reformed ex-convict who helps find jobs for the unemployed, believes the people of Atlanta have learned the lesson Dr. King taught.
We're not going to get rallied up over nothing and get into no trouble and burn down our home and loot, because we don't look at things that way. We figure that if we have any grouse anything, we'd rather take it and talk it over the table with it. And I think that's the best way.
Good morning. Good morning. How you feeling?
No one can say whether Atlanta will stay cool, but Atlanta is doing more than most cities to convince the ghetto neighborhoods it is trying to make things better. It is only a start, but it is something. Ed Rabel, CBS News, Atlanta.
When Senator Eugene McCarthy failed to win the Democratic nomination for president in Chicago, it left him with a hard core of supporters and seemingly, at the moment, no place to go. It isn't that he's lacking suggestions. David Shoemaker reports from Washington.
Thousands of telegrams have come to Eugene McCarthy's Senate office, all but a few asking him to lead a new party. He will not. A handful of exceptions among the telegrams urge him to support Hubert Humphrey. He will not do that either. While Humphrey aides still insist McCarthy will eventually work for the ticket, Humphrey has made no attempt to contact McCarthy. And unless, for a starter, he's ready to change his position on the war, it would do no good. McCarthy is now a spokesman for a substantial number of voters, but he feels he cannot lead them to Humphrey even if he wanted to. The fourth party idea is tempting, but right after the convention, McCarthy called in a small group of the young people who were closest to him during the campaign and summed up his feelings this way. There is neither the money nor the time to build a new organization this year. He is a little surprised that Rockefeller did not try. McCarthy already has taken his name off the ballot in several states and will do so again wherever his over-eager supporters try to advance an independent candidacy. However, he may leave his name on the ballot in one or two of the larger states, particularly California, where a massive petition drive is already underway. McCarthy feels Humphrey cannot win California anyway, and it would be a significant test of McCarthy's strength. But for the most part, McCarthy will do what he advised his young aides to do the other day: work for like-minded senatorial candidates such as O'Dwyer in New York, Hughes in Iowa, Cranston in California, Church in Idaho, Eagleton in Missouri, and Gilligan in Ohio, and hope that they can weather a Humphrey defeat. For McCarthy has felt since New Hampshire that this is Richard Nixon's year. And privately, McCarthy suspects that Nixon, who is not bound by recent Vietnam policy, may be better able to bring the war to an early end. David Shoemaker, CBS News, Washington.
Mississippi's regular Democrats who failed to get seated at the National Convention in Chicago today came out for George Wallace. Governor John Bell Williams said he, too, is for Wallace.
Out with the old bonus.
Hey, Matilda, I thought you liked bonus detergent.
Love it.
Then what do you...
Bonus has a new towel. Brand new design, English rose. Pretty little rose bouquets.
Well, it's prettier design than the old one, but how's the towel?
Got the good housekeeping seal.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, but bonus earned it. I get this beautiful new towel and work clothes whitening power.
You and bonus win my seal of approval.
Frank, don't you have a plumper turkey? It's for my in-laws. You're so fussy about turkey. Don't you care about his peanut butter? Peanut butter? I buy a top brand and they're all alike. Turkey's different, peanut butter's different. Sniff your brand. Okay. Now, sniff Jif. Smells more like fresh peanuts. Taste Jif.
Taste
more like fresh peanuts.
Scotty, I'm going to buy you Jif.
Choosy mothers choose Jif.
The latest weekly Vietnam casualty toll, released in Saigon today, lists 408 Americans killed in action. The loss was the highest for any week since last May's communist offensive. 1,398 American wounded required hospitalization. South Vietnam reported 284 combat fatalities, and the number of enemy troops killed was put at 4,476. In the war today, heavy rains and high winds from a typhoon limited both ground and air action. Reports from Da Nang, South Vietnam's second largest city, said the storm caused substantial damage there and in other sections of the northern provinces. South Vietnam's government has removed several more of its officials, partly as a result of its campaign against corruption. President Thieu's office announced today that the director of South Vietnam's Central Intelligence Agency and 4 province chiefs have been replaced. President Thieu issued a statement today saying he would not object if General Duong Van Minh wanted to return to South Vietnam. The general, known as Big Minh, is a former chief of state who has been in exile in Thailand since 1965. Minh is popular among the South Vietnamese, and there's been talk that the Saigon regime, in a move to strengthen its popular base, would like to bring him back in some official capacity. Czechoslovakia's Foreign Minister Hayek was reported tonight to be returning to Prague, where there is a good chance he will be told he has lost his job. Hayek, who was in Yugoslavia when the Russians invaded his country, has been denounced by Moscow for his efforts to improve relations with countries outside the Soviet bloc. Hayek represents only one of many problems that Czechoslovak party leader Alexander Dubček faces in satisfying Soviet occupation forces. Dubček remains popular with the Czechs, even though he's made it quite clear that his liberal reforms will have to be sharply curtailed under concessions to Moscow. This film of Dubček was taken yesterday by Czechoslovak television. Daytime relief flights into Biafra, scheduled to start today, were delayed when Nigeria and Biafra could not agree on where the Red Cross plane should land. Nigeria approved the airlift this week, and Biafran officials say they would welcome it. But the Red Cross says the wrangling over which airstrips to use kept its planes grounded today at an offshore supply base. Swaziland, Britain's last piece of territory in Africa, was granted independence tonight. Located in southern Africa, the kingdom has a population of only 400,000. But it has fertile soil, rich mineral deposits, and an active king. Now 69 years old, he's reported to have 170 wives. There's been no accurate count on the number of children since 1933, when he took his 50th bride. Prices made a strong advance on the New York stock market today, giving the Dow Jones Industrial Average a gain so far this week of more than 21 points. Volume today was 13 million shares. The exchange index rose 37 cents. A proposed merger has been worked out between P. Lorillard Corporation, the nation's 5th largest cigarette manufacturer, and Loews Theaters, which runs movie houses, hotels, and motels across the country. Stockholders of both firms still must vote on the proposal.
Can't sleep because of simple nervous tension? Take Sominex for a good night's sleep and a good bright morning, too.
Sominex contains 3 medical ingredients to bring on sleep.
Take Sominex as directed for 100% safe sleep.
Take Sominex tonight and sleep safe and restful. Sleep, sleep, sleep.
Take 2 Sominex tablets.
And sleep.
Now, also in capsules, hundreds of sleep-inducing granules.
In every Sominex capsule. Try it.
When a man is all man, a woman becomes all woman. Redwood by Aquavelva is all man.
To make a woman feel all woman.
Redwood is all man.
To make a woman feel all woman.
Redwood, the exciting new aftershave by Aquavelva. Try it.
Eric Sevareid in Washington takes a look tonight at the emerging presidential campaign with Election Day just 2 months off. Eric?
The Democratic jousters are repairing their wounds and their armor while the freshly mounted Mr. Nixon enters his carefully selected lists, acutely aware of what not to do. He will not say anything new on Vietnam. He will not take sides in the rancorous quarrel over the Chicago police. He will not take sides in the showdown fight over the confirmation of Mr. Fortas as Chief Justice. He will not perform at old-fashioned nighttime political rallies, which won't make the morning papers or network prime time, and he will not let himself get tired, a condition in which men make foolish statements.
In hours of talk yesterday in Chicago, Nixon said nothing on which a reporter could build a pungent lead paragraph. All this is just what Thomas Dewey did in 1948. Because he was so far ahead in the polls, he concluded that prudence was wiser than originality. Mr. Nixon, of course, is aware of 48 and has no wish to repeat that miscalculation. But serenity and uncontroversiality have an advantage this time they did not have then. This lies in the fact that the great central mass of voters appears to be tired of emotion and of controversy. This could be the year when quietness pays off, in votes as well as in restored nerve ends. Since Vice President Humphrey, by nature, can hardly out-silence Nixon, he will almost certainly have to try to make Nixon open up. He believes Nixon is goadable on past performance and will surely make the effort. It will be difficult. What seems new about the Nixon of '68 is his greater self-control under pressure. Every politician is his own worst enemy finally, and Nixon has shrewdly analyzed his faults of yesteryear. At the moment, the Democrats' troubles lie more in the realm of the general national mood than in party structure. The last polls show that the number of voters who regard themselves normally as Democrats has dropped by several points from the 47% level. Now more people think of themselves as independents than as Democrats or Republicans. Structurally, the Democrats' condition is not irreparable. Fourth-party threats on the liberal left are not likely to get very far, given the difficulty of getting on the ballot in most states. Senator McCarthy will sit it all out in noble silence, apparently, but various others, including California's Jess Unruh, are drifting back into the party sheepfold, or perhaps bullring is a better word. All the while the two candidates talk, one man remains who can do. That is President Johnson, and what he does, especially about Vietnam, may well have more effect on the November vote than all the candidate speeches combined. Harry?
In the battle for the minds of men, the United States moved in two areas today. Army psychological warfare officials in Saigon have a plan to allow bars of unmarked soap wrapped in plain wrappers to fall into enemy hands. Each bar would have 8 propaganda messages embedded in it, like a fortune cookie. And as the communists lathered up, they'd find such messages as surrender or die. And in Washington, the State Department canceled the scheduled visit to the Soviet Union of the University of Minnesota Symphonic Band, in view, a spokesman said, of what happened in Czechoslovakia. That's the news. This is Harry Reasoner for Walter Cronkite. Good night.
If you could put Tareyton's charcoal filter on the end of your cigarette, if you could put Tareyton's charcoal filter on your cigarette, well, anyway, if you could put Tareyton's charcoal filter on your cigarette, you'd have a better tasting cigarette. Of course, we can't guarantee it'd smoke as smooth as a Tareyton. To begin with, no other cigarette has Tareyton tobacco. And when that tobacco is smoothed by Tareyton's activated charcoal filter, it tastes even milder. Better face it, if you want your cigarette to smoke as smooth as a Tareyton, it'll just have to be a Tareyton with the activated charcoal filter. That's why us Tareyton smokers would rather fight than switch.
Direct from our newsroom in New York, this has been the CBS Evening News with Harry Reasoner substituting for Walter Cronkite. Tomorrow.